Hey guys, welcome back for a little bit of a different kind of video. I've recently noticed that I'm coming up on a pretty large milestone for my YouTube channel. We're hitting 1,000 subscribers, which, it's no Casey Neistat, but let's be realistic here. I never expected to hit 1,000 or even close, ever. So thank you to everybody who watches my awful videos. I appreciate you sticking it out with me. I hope to have new and interesting videos in the future. Hopefully they're less boring, but we'll see. I thought I'd do a little Q&A. I get a lot of commonly asked questions, and I also specifically grabbed some questions that were directly sent to me for this video. We'll see how it goes. I may edit a lot of this out, but we'll see. So first question here, kind of a combination of questions, but basically the question is, how did I get started, and how can somebody else get started in making crazy weapons? It's very simple. For me, I have no background or education or training or anything in any of the areas you see in my videos. Nothing to do with art or welding or metal fabrication or anything. I am totally self-taught. I bought myself a MIG welding machine a couple of years ago. I just wanted a new and interesting hobby, and this is it. It's just kind of grown from there. Originally, I had really focused on watching Jimmy DiResta. If you've never seen Jimmy's videos, he does a focus on woodworking, but he does metalworking, plastics, leather, everything in between. He can pretty much make it, and he does a pretty damn good job at it. And his videos have high production value, and it is just a joy to watch. So that's what got me started. But once I saw Michael Cthulhu's videos, I knew it was over. I've always had an interest in, video games and anime and crazy weapons like that, that go along with those genres. Watching Mike's videos, I basically used his original Buster Sword video as a template, and I made my own. It's the first weapon I ever made, the first real thing I ever even tried to make. It was a hell of a project, but I made it with basically no tools and no skills, just a lot of time. And that kind of segues into the question of, how can anybody get started in this? Simply put, you can get started with anything. You can buy, if you want to get started small with, say, knives, you can buy pre-hardened steel blanks, you can buy Damascus steel blanks, and you can just make a stock removal knife. You're not doing any blacksmithing or forging or anything like that. You're just removing material to make your shape, and that's it. All you really need would be, an angle grinder and some basic files and sandpaper and stuff like that. You could make a knife and a handle and sharpen it and everything with just a handful of basic tools. All kinds of great YouTube channels out there for whatever you're interested in. Obviously Mike is a great resource. I try to be a resource. Maybe someday I'll have, better and better content, but I'm working towards it. I made my first Buster Sword with a MIG welder, an angle grinder, a die grinder, a belt sander, and files and sandpaper. That's pretty much all I used. I may have used a plasma cutter to cut out the two little holes in the center. Obviously very handy for drilling through the tough AR-450 or AR-500 steel, but I didn't describe a ton of materials. The welder would be the most expensive by far, but you can see where I am. This is my shop. It's literally just a garage. There's a car right here, right next to me. This is a two-post lift for it. I just kind of have everything crammed in here, and I actually moved my wife's car out of here, which is where the camera is right now. I move it out of here when I need some extra room, but I'm not renting a space. I took no classes. There's very little initial overhead. Of course, over the years you buy tens of thousands of dollars of tools, but you can get started with basically nothing. So I've been asked if this looks infected. Yes, my red bearded friend, there's no hope for you. Sorry. Another question I get all the time: how sharp are my swords? So, really, it depends. When I initially started making swords, they weren't super sharp, and I kind of gradually kept making them sharper and sharper as I went along. The Dragon Slayer build video shows the sharpest sword I've ever made. It was really too sharp. I just kind of wanted to see how sharp I could get something. So I just sharpened it over and over and over again, pass after pass. I probably spent a good half of a day sharpening that thing. And at the end, if you watch the video, I actually shaved the hair off my arm with it. Which is great, except it's just ludicrous and way more dangerous than having an extremely sharp normal sword. In fact, what ended up happening is I ended up chopping the corner of my finger off, and sliced right through the fingernail and everything. In a situation where the sword was stationary, the sword was just lying on a bench. I was packing it up to be shipped, and I just accidentally put my hand into the sword, and I didn't even realize it happened. It just sliced the corner of my finger off, and I just kept on working, and then I was like, a lot of blood coming from this glove for no apparent reason. So yeah, that was a lot of fun. Luckily, it wasn't much worse. And when you think about it, this Dragon Slayer was 54 pounds, it's almost 7 feet long. If I had dropped it, or if it had fallen over or something like that, it could cause monster damage. It's just too big and too heavy to really have something that sharp and not expect to get injured by it. If you have a normal combat historical sword, they only weigh 2, 3, 4 pounds, so if you've got a 3-pound sword lying on a bench and you bump into it, it's just gonna slide. You know what I mean? It's not that big or that heavy. It's not really the end of the world. And if you drop it, yeah, you're gonna get a cut on your foot or your leg or something like that. But when you talk about something that weighs, nearly 20 times as much, it's just insane. So I don't make swords that sharp anymore. I can if requested, but it's a lot of time and labor into making something that's impractical, dangerously impractical. So I realize it's probably silly to even say any of this because it's already a ludicrously dangerous weapon in the first place, and nobody in their right mind would use it or buy it. So, I guess it all depends on your perspective, but I try to keep them more like a sharpness that you would find in an axe in a big box store or something like that. Fairly sharp. They can certainly chop wood, but they're not shaving sharp, as Scalagrim would say, and you won't lose any important body parts, hopefully. You can still use them to smash things, and they won't instantly turn dull because they're so razor sharp on the edge. That's my idea anyway. So somebody asked what I do in my spare time, or what I do in real life and in my spare time, I should say. So in real life, I work in IT. I'm a sysadmin. It's my 9-to-5 job. What you see here in the shop is simply my free time, mostly weekends. It's just a hobby that I can sustain without incurring too much expense, I guess, both time and money. Weekdays, I'm into powerlifting, so 4 days a week I have dedicated to my powerlifting training. That's another one that doesn't incur too much expense, but it pays in many different ways. That's pretty much it. IT, metalworking, and lifting is pretty much my entire life in Game of Thrones. So this one's another kind of combination question. It's a common thing I get, and I got several questions along the same lines. So basically the question is, how do I come up with the build process? How do I come up with the little jigs and inventions to make certain parts of the sword? Honestly, it's really just on the fly decision making. A lot of the parts, a lot of swords and axes and hammers I make, and the parts for them are unique, I guess. So there's no precedent. There's no kind of template or formula to follow. I just kind of have to make do with the tools that I have. Oftentimes something would be much easier with a lathe or a mill or, you know, a surface grinder or whatever very expensive piece of machinery that I don't have, so I just kind of have to figure it out. Somebody like Michael Cthulhu has been a huge inspiration in that area, of course. If anything, I would say that's probably his strongest strength, his biggest strength, I suppose. And he can make anything work with an angle grinder. He's kind of like, as I said before, he's kind of like one of those chainsaw artists that make those beautiful, huge wooden sculptures out of chainsaws. The angle grinder is Mike's chainsaw, and he has so many hours behind it, he can basically do anything with it. I'm not that good personally, so you may have noticed I rely on better tools, and I'm hoping to get, you know, even better tools, more professional level tools in the future. I have a lathe on the way. I've always been curious about machining, so I'll be able to hopefully integrate that into my videos, but we'll see. As far as the process goes, honestly, I use a lot of visualization. So I watched a video. It was Adam Savage and Vsauce, I think, and they were discussing, I think, the things that were on. It was one of their desks. It was just all cluttered with everything, and they were just going over every item on the desk and what its purpose was and why it was there. And they got in a little sidebar conversation about visualizing their work. And at the time, I was kind of like, that's silly. I would never waste my time, you know, imagining. I would just do the work. But it was kind of a turning point because it really made me think about how I do things. And I realized I do visualize, I just don't really think about it and I don't plan for it. Commonly, I'll be in the gym, I'll be in the shower, I'll be lying awake at night, whatever, just daydreaming at work. And whenever I'm doing that, I'm always literally walking myself through the process of doing something. So I'll have a project that I've been working on the last few months, and I'll be thinking about how am I going to weld on these rings, you know, and hide the weld and, you know, seamlessly integrate everything. And I will literally just see myself doing the process. And then that will allow me to see the flaws in that process. I'll say, oh, if I weld it here first, then I won't be able to reach and sand this part. I need to switch the order around. I'll literally do the whole project in my head over a course of weeks or months prior to actually doing it. So then I almost have practice when it comes time to actually do it. It's interesting because I guess it's just something I never really considered, or I never even realized I was really doing it until I saw that video and I really sat down and thought about it. So visualize. It works for me. So this isn't so much a question as it is a basic philosophy. A thing that comes up a lot is knowing when something is done. You know, have I sanded this enough? Have I blended in these wells enough? Have I made it the perfect shape possible? You know, at what point do you stop? And the answer is the sniff test. So commonly, I do get questions about collaborations. Most commonly, of course, everybody wants me to collaborate with Michael Cthulhu. If you're not aware, Mike and I are casual internet acquaintances. We only live about, I'd say, 90 minutes apart here in Massachusetts. We never met. I don't know if we ever will. Probably someday. We have discussed doing collaborations. The problem, I guess, is I have a huge backlog of orders to get through, and so does Mike. So taking the time to do a collaboration project, especially when we have paying customers waiting, is just kind of not really in the cards. I had one person even mention doing a build-off with Mike, and I'm sure it would be fun, but obviously at this point in time Mike would decimate me completely, so it really wouldn't be much of a competition. And then it goes back to the whole problem where, you know, we're building projects for customers, so, you know, when are we going to have the time to do a build off, and what would we even make, and how would we sell it, or would it be something that was pre-commissioned? Who knows? I doubt that'll ever happen, but we'll probably do some sort of collaboration, even if it's just a partial build, I do part, he does part, or, you know, something along those lines. We'll see. So I had somebody ask me how I keep track of all the projects I'm working on and the ideas and everything. This is all I do. I just use Google Sheets. Sorry about that. Hang on. Oh, here we go. I use Google Sheets. They have a pre-built to-do list, and I literally just put all my ideas on there and check them off as I go. And you can just put a link to this on your phone or whatever, so I have access to this everywhere. And I just go down the list one by one, or whatever looks good that day or that week or that month, and it's pretty handy. I've been asked what's next. So good question. Right now it's early October. I'm working on the Cypher Sword from the Strider video game. That video will probably be out in 2 months-ish. After that, I have a stand for that same sword, and I also have another Dragon Slayer, which I've already done the video for, so there's probably going to be a bit of a, you know, a lapse in build videos. I'm not going to make 2 videos about the same thing. I've already made a video for a sword stand and for the Dragon Slayer, so it'll probably be a good 6 months, probably early 2018, before I make any new videos. You'll have to get by. Maybe I'll make some small ones in the meantime, I guess. That might be a good idea. I do have some small projects I'm working on, or at least I have in mind, so we'll see. So in the interest of keeping this video relatively short, I think that's enough questions for now. I don't want another long and boring video on my channel. Hopefully I'll try to keep this around 10 minutes. We'll see. Probably won't make 10 minutes, but oh well. I appreciate you stopping by. I appreciate you subscribing, and look forward to more boring, lame content in the future. Thanks guys, appreciate it.